Welcome to www.happynumbers.org. Today's lesson is solving algebraic equations which contain parentheses. These are parentheses, if you recall. And as a review, if you recall, this expression right here is read as 4 times the quantity of x plus 3. So it means 4 times both of these. Well, the process is very simple if we follow our order of operations. First thing we must do is deal with our parentheses. This means 4 times the quantity of x plus 3. So we'll multiply 4 times x, which will give us 4x, and then 4 times a positive 3, which will give us 12. So we multiply 4 by each of these terms. So 4 times x is 4x. 4 times a positive 3 is positive 12. And we have equals 20. Well, now we just have a normal equation. We want to, obviously, we always want to isolate the variable or the unknown. So let's deal with our positive 12 here. We can use the opposite or inverse, negative 12. And we have to use negative 12 here. And we have 4x. When we combine positive 12 and negative 12, they go away, 0, equals 20, take away 12, which is 8. Now we want to deal with the 4, and we know this is multiplication, so we can divide by 4 and divide by 4, and we get x is equal to 2. Let's go back into, all right, so we're saying we solve for x and x is equal to 2. So let's put that there and let's go back to our initial equation and see what happens. We'll substitute 2 for x. Well, 4 times 2, which is x, plus 3 equals 20. Well, we have to deal with our parentheses first, so it's 4 times 2 plus 3 is 5 equals 20. 4 times 5 is 20, which does equal 20. So our solution, x equals 2, is correct. Well, that's all there is to it. It's a fairly simple, again, skill set. Let's take a look at another problem. Let's take 4w minus the quantity of 3w plus 2 equals 5. Okay, now the one thing that you have to realize about this particular problem is this is really a negative 1. But we don't write it. We don't write it. But in working the problem, we need to understand that there is really a negative 1 here. In fact, it might be helpful to write it in when you see the problem. So this says 4 times w minus 1 times the quantity of 3 times w plus 2 is equal to 5. Well, let's deal with our parentheses, this part of the expression first. So we have 4w. Now remember, we have to remember this is really, even though it's not written, there's a negative 1 here. So we have 4w. Now we have negative 1 times positive 3w, which would give me a negative 3w. Because negative 1 times 3 is negative 3, and we have the w. Then we have negative 1 times a positive 2, which would give me a negative 2, equals 5. Well, now I have two like terms here. I have a 4w and a 3w. Well, I can combine these. 4w minus 3w will give me w minus 2 is equal to 5. Now I want to get w by itself, and I have a negative 2, so I'll use the opposite or inverse, positive 2, W, and when I combine the positive and negative 2 goes away, equals 5 plus 2 is 7. So we're saying W is equal to 7. Let's go back into our initial equation and see if that's correct. We're saying here 4 times W, so it would be 4 times 7 minus 3 times W, which would be 3 times 7 plus 2 is equal to 5. Well, let's deal with this first. We know there's a negative 1 here. Well, first of all, let's do this. So we'll have, well, we can combine all our steps. We can do this. 4 times 7 is 28. Now we have a negative 1, or let's do minus 3 times 7 is 21, plus 2 equals 5. Now we have 28, and now a negative 1 times positive 21 is minus 21. And we have a negative 1 times positive 2 is minus 2 is equal to 5. Well, 28 minus 21 is 27. My bad. 28 minus 21 is 7. And 7 minus 2 is 5. And 5 equals 5. So our solution, 7, is correct. Again, let me just review this skill set here. Key thing is to realize there is a negative, this is negative 1, even though it's not written. In fact, if you want to, as I suggested, you can actually write it in so that you don't forget it's there. But generally in the problem, you will not see it. All right, let's try a different one. I'll put one up and we'll let you solve it, and then we'll come back and take a look at it. Let's take this one. 2 times the quantity of A plus 3 is equal to 16. Go ahead and put your DVD on pause, work that, and then turn it back on and we'll take a look at it. 2 times the quantity of A plus 3, so we'll multiply 2 times A, and they're both positive, so it'll be 2A, and then we multiply 2 times positive 3, which will give us 6, equals 16. Now I want to isolate my variable of my unknown, so I want to deal with this positive 6, and I can use the inverse or opposite, negative 6, negative 6. And I get 2A, and when I combine the positive and negative, they cancel out. Equals 16, take away 6, which is 10. I want to isolate A, and this is multiplication, so I use division. So that's 2 divided by 2. These cancel out, and I get A equals 10 divided by 2. A equals 5. How'd you do? Okay, good. Let's try you on another one. Let's make this one a little more complex, but I think if you just follow your steps, 2 times m times 3 times the quantity of m plus 3 equals a negative 13. Well, put your video or DVD on pause and try working this problem. Okay, well first we have 2 times m minus 3 times the quantity of m plus 3. So let's deal with this here. So it'll be 2m. Now negative 3 times m would be negative 3m. And then negative 3 times positive 3 would give us positive 9 equals negative 13. Okay, so that's our first step. Now we have like terms here. We have a positive 2m and a negative 3m. We can combine these. Positive 2m and a negative 3m would give me negative m plus 9 equals negative 13. All right, now we want to get m by itself, and I have 9 here, positive 9, so I can use the inverse, negative 9, and I get negative m is equal to, when I combine the positive and negative, this goes away, and a negative 13 plus a negative 9 will give me 9, 10, 11, 12, a negative 22. Okay, excellent. Generally, when you're working with a problem like this, you may consider multiplying both sides by negative 1. Well, if I multiply negative 1 times negative m, I just get m, because negative and negative gives me a positive. And if I multiply negative 22 times negative 1, I get 22. Multiplying by 1 does not change the value, the number value, but it can change the sign. All right, one more. And this one, let's see, we'll try and pick one that'll stretch your imagination a little bit. Let's take this one. 3 times the quantity of x minus 6 is equal to 2 times the quantity of x plus 3. You should be able to work this without too much problem. Go ahead and put your DVD on pause. Work through it and then turn it back on again, and we'll see how you did. Okay, well, we want to deal with this and this term. So we're going to go 3 times x, and they're both positive, so it's 3x. And 3 times negative 6 gives us negative 18. Equals 2 times x, which would be 2x, and 2 times 3, which would be positive 6. Well, okay, we want to get all of the variables on one side and all the numbers on the other. Let's deal with this. We have a positive 2x, so we know we can use the inverse, a negative 2x. And if we do that here, we have to do negative 2x here. And if we combine these, 3x and a negative 2x gives us just x, 1x, minus 18 is equal to, well, if we combine the positive 2x and the negative 2x, that goes away, is equal to 6. Ah, my bad. 6, not 16. Okay, now I have my 18 here. Well, it's a negative 18, so I want to put the opposite, positive 18, and I wind up with x, and the negative 18 and positive 18 cancel out, equals 18 plus 6, which is 24. Good, good. Well, that's it. It's for working with algebraic equations that deal with parentheses. Let's go back and just take a quick look at what we want to keep in mind here. One is we want to deal with our parentheses. So we know we have to multiply this times this and this times that, this times that, this times that. And keep in mind also in an expression like this, that there really is a negative 1 here, but it is not written. Good job. Well, thank you. We'll see you next time.